Hello and welcome to Coffee and Catholics, a Catholic women's talk show podcast. I'm Stacy, one of your hosts, and with me I have...
Hi, I'm Alisha.
I'm Annie.
And I'm Lauren.
Hello and welcome to Coffee and Catholics. This week we're going to be just kind of having a discussion about what to kind of do with our youth when programs seem to be dwindling or non-existent or being shifted to other parishes. So how do we as parents kind of deal with that? So one of the reasons why this conversation kind of got sparked was in previous episodes, I've already talked about how there's not really a youth group at our parish. There are things for our youth. We still have family faith formation, and there's once a month, Nights of the Altar and Handmaidens of the Lord during the school year, and things like that. And our high schoolers go to Steubenville, and so there's still some really good programs, but there's not really a youth group. And I recently also read about somebody who said that their whole youth program, even their family faith formation or their RE, was being moved to another parish that was 45 minutes away. And so how do you deal with that when you can't drive that far, and you still want your child to have a Catholic formation? And so we're kind of thinking about this and how we would do that with our families if that was the situation, or the situations that we're in. Because when I was a kid, youth group was so huge. And almost my mom, there wasn't a lot of catechesis at home because it was all done at youth group. All the religious education and everything, as far as being in high school, that was all done on youth night, which was once a week.
Yeah.
Well, I think what you just said kind of points to kind of the overarching theme of what this conversation is going to be, and that is who's the primary educators of our children, especially when it comes to our faith. And the church is very clear about this, and I think it's also kind of a naturally, something that we as parents are responsible for. We as parents are responsible. We are the primary educators of our children. And so, that's not to knock any parents, your parents, Stacy, or anybody else at all. But I think that, for me, when I hear about that kind of thing, it's a bummer. If you have a religious education program in your church and it's shutting down, it's moving away, maybe you can't make that happen with your schedule or your finances or whatever to go somewhere 45 minutes away, that would be a kind of a blow. Because you want your children to have that formation. And even if you're teaching your children at home and it's a regular part of your daily lives, you still kind of want that community aspect. Mm-hmm. And so that would be hard. And for families who they want that, but there's very little offered. And we've had a conversation a couple of years ago similar to this, where we discussed, maybe starting your own group if you have that available, that time and that, energy and the resources available to start something at your church, but just not everybody does. Mm-hmm. And so, how do we kind of approach the education of our kids?
And Stacy, you mentioned how growing up youth group is really big, and how a lot of the formation you have is there. For me, it was kind of both, because my parents, I had confirmation in 8th grade, and after that year, I think it was around that the couple who had done confirmation and youth group for a long time were retiring from that. They were older, and they needed somebody to step up. So my parents did. They said, okay, well, it's a need, so we're going to go ahead and volunteer for it. You hear more and more now, most youth ministers or youth leaders, I guess, are a paid position. I'm feeling now that theirs was all volunteer, and that was so our formation. My formation through youth group was at youth group, but at home preparing for youth group, and we were constantly at the church. But they did so they were able to just say, okay, well, there's a need, and we're going to step in and do it. But like I said, Alisha, not everybody is able to do that, and especially like with when you have a lot of kids that I have just 2 siblings. One of them was much younger, or one of them is much younger. And so like being able to kind of the flexibility of that they had to be able to join in on there. And then, but like we're talking about a whole religious education program, not just youth group, but like all of it, being, removed from, or not being available. What is there? Like I've heard it that, from you, Stacy, from like the missionary churches that you go to, like they're not, you have to travel for that one. What are we doing as a church? And yes, the primary educators of our children, we do need to step up as parents for sure. But I also think like our church does need to be providing things. Like we need to be, if it is going to be placed further in the hands of the parents, what formation is being given to the parents?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that we've talked about before, how our Protestant brothers and sisters do this really, really well, in forming or in having their like Sunday school being for having the different like groups
all the way
school,
up to adults,
through adulthood, through not up to, but through through adulthood, and like having them have it. I know that some of the, I don't know if this is like this at all churches, but I know like the bigger mega churches that I've gone to for like voting, they have the like ads for the different types, or like the different ads for, or their different groups that are forming, that are so like you go to your Sunday school class and it is like all other moms of preschool kids, or single moms, or or a mixed husband wife, like different, or like different levels of things, and it's very geared towards that, and that's the group of people that you are doing your like Bible study time every week with, and they really are focusing towards that. And what are we doing as a church to help grow the faith? And I know that there are a lot of churches that do this really, really well, or a lot of parishes, I should say. Parishes that do this really, really well, but then there's a lot that don't.
Well, and I kind of wonder sometimes how much finances have to do with that, because it's always nice to, like, I think it's wonderful that your parents volunteered their time, but
it was a lot of
especially
time,
especially with our economy nowadays, what's happening is a lot of those positions, the church can't financially pay somebody to do that. So then people who are all stretched thin don't have the time to dedicate that much time to because it takes a lot to plan that type of program. So a lot of it's falling on the priests themselves to do this. And I think that's not right either. Like, while they are our pastors, they're our shepherds, they have many, many jobs. And yes, educating their flock is one of them. So like, I'm not saying that they shouldn't do it at all, but like, they can't do everything. Like, they're human like the rest of us, and so they can't do everything. So I'm kind of like, I think that this is an issue, but I'm not sure there's a very good, like a clear solution for what the church itself can do. But I know that when we went to the discipleship dinner a while back, it was interesting to me that our table, a lot of people said that when they said, where do you think your evangelizing focus should be? A lot of us said our family, and it was like immediate family, like sisters, brothers, our children, things like that. And so I think you're right that we need to be giving the families tangible resources to use and helping form their families. But I'm also with Alisha on that. It's like us as parents need to step up and making sure that our own children are formed. Yes, it'd be beautiful if they could have this community with other kids at their parish and things like that. But it really is our job to form them in. And even though I said, like, oh, my mom was like, oh, it's all here. she tried, but her generation was not very well catechized. So that's why I am agreeing with you also, like, because it's just kind of like the parents have to be well catechized so that they can be the primary educators. So then what type of resources do we give parents so that they can effectively evangelize their own children?
So what Stacy was talking about is the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City, they've started these dinners that they're bringing together people who are in some kind of discipleship role throughout their archdiocese. It started small, like with just they had a committee and they just like the people that they could think of. It was about like 200 people that they could think of, and then those people invited people that they thought of, and so it's growing. We've just had 2 dinners so far, and it was just getting together and just discussing ways of within our own communities of how we are going and making future disciples, and so we had a small group, a table together, which with the Archbishop, and that was that's what she was speaking on. I think that is one way that our church, that the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City at least, is growing in this and providing a way, because like you said, we talked about how it's within our own families that we're doing this, but they provide, like there was a talk about I don't remember what the topic was on that evening, but like something that pertained to us as disciples and ways that we can, just some thought-provoking discussion. And we did the Visio Divina, and just to kind of think of different, it's some spiritual formation in that aspect, and just being able to provide that for us. And then that upcoming this weekend, we're having a discipleship conference in Oklahoma City. And so those sorts of things I think are available. As for on the parish level, I think that it's beautiful that a lot of parishes are doing the subscription to Formed. That has been a really big resource, at least for my family. Like whether it's the kids videos or the adult videos, like I'll turn on something for the kids on there. And I feel like, they're learning something, or they're not just being entertained with junk. And then we'll even I'll turn on some of the adult, they have some discussions about different religious art. And we've watched some of those with the kids of it. I'll watch it, and the kids may not be paying attention, but I'll be kind of learning and gleaning for something, learning from that. They'll just kind of glean a little bit just by the fact that they're in there. But that resource, the form.org, is a really good way that I think that many parishes are providing for their parishioners to be able to learn at home themselves, so then they can pass it on as well.
Well, we watched Formed in, what was it, Ryan DeFrady, Secret Agent. My kids ask for them all the time. And the problem is that they ask for it. Ryan DeFrady's. Exactly. But they ask for it during lunch, and the problem, though, is that when we watch it during lunch, they don't eat. They sit there and stare at it. And I'll have a funny little...
Well, so what you do is you say, when you finish your lunch, I'll let you do a rest period by watching the show.
You're smart. I'm not a smart parent, Stacy. I need to call you from now on and be like, this isn't working, Stacy. Give me answers. But, it was so funny. So, Brian DeFrady's, this is a little side note, but it has a story about Brian DeFrady's secret agent. His mom's an agent too. And they do their secret agent stuff. And at the end, the cartoon creators, the creators make themselves little cartoons, and they discuss how the story relates, the moral of the story relates to some biblical story and lesson. And then one of them was talking about stealing, and I think it was, they went into this place and they came back, somebody found out that somebody stole something, and so the earth swallowed them up and they died. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's a serious lesson. They're so God does not like stealing. You can see how, or lying, and you can see how seriously he takes it. And my daughter gets up and she just leaves. And I was like, well, that's strange. And she comes back and she's like, Mom, I took this from your room. And I'm like, I didn't make a connection at first. I was just like, oh, look, she's learning the moral of the story. That's great. And then I realized she might have thought that God was going to swallow her big hole. And she was terrified.
Whatever works.
It works. I thought that was so funny. But no,
we need to rewatch that episode.
Yeah, right? Kids might bring your, jewelry, whatever it is that you want.
I don't have jewelry.
No, but I mean, like, when we're discussing about the church, and this might not be the way that you guys mean it by any means, but when I hear us talking about, like, okay, well, parents are the primary educators, and also it would be great to have the church do something, like, it sounds like we're talking about this far different distance entity, that, like, they are supposed to do stuff to give us, but we are the church. So I think it's something that's kind of it depends, it's situational. It depends on the community, how many people are in the community, how many families are in the community, which families have that time and resources accessible to them to be able to start something, or maybe extroverted enough, or willing, even be as introverts, to step out of their comfort zone and go and do something and start something, because like you're talking about, Stacy, it can't always be the priest. So it's like we have to kind of step up sometimes as parishioners and say, hey, I want something. Or if I'm not, sorry, baby dropped something. But if I'm not willing to do that thing because this is way out of my comfort zone, I don't feel like I can do this, I'm going to have an anxiety attack about it, but like maybe, or whatever the case may be, maybe I know somebody who might be willing to do this thing, and we go and talk to people. Like, if we want it to be something that is specifically through the church, like we are the church, we can't just, I don't think that we can talk about it, and again, maybe you guys weren't talking about it like this, but we can't see the church as something that is just like this thing outside of ourselves that, they have to do it. We are a part of the church.
Thank you for making that distinction. Because yes, I could see what you were made, like how it kind of came off on that. But yeah, I absolutely agree with that. That we need to step out of that, and if we're gonna, if we want these things, then we need to also be able to provide these things. If you have, the gift of, like you said, whatever it is, like you have these gifts, like that we are needing to be disciples and share those with others, so that each of us feel more equipped to be able to pass it down. And as parents, I feel like there's that obligation definitely to be able to to further the education of our kids. And I know, there's so many times that I just feel so inadequate, and being able to go and find, to rely on those who have been around the block, who kind of been there before, and say, okay, what did you do in this situation, or what, and get their experience has helped me, and then to be able to then pass that down to others. That's what, that's what it is about, if anything, but with being a disciple like that, it's that passing on from one generation to the next, the call to following Jesus. And the church won't continue unless we are willing to pass things on.
Well, and I'm glad that you mentioned about the feeling of inadequacy or whatever, because that's what I was kind of talking about when I talk about the church, because people see the church like the priest or the people who work for the church, the administration or whatever, that they're the person you have to hand your paperwork into, and this is the person that leads classes. We see them as authority figures because they're supposed to know the stuff. Does that make sense? So if we don't know the stuff, so that's where I was talking, not necessarily that we're different, it's them and us, but usually if somebody's looking for formation at the place of the church, the physical place, not the group, the us place. That's, I feel like that's a lot of times what they're looking for is that they feel inadequate to be again. So that goes back to catechizing our parents so that they can adequately catechize their children. And Informed is a great way. That's a great resource. Do we have any, are there any books or other resources that you guys have used? I've used a lot of the Catholic Sprouts stuff to help catechize my own children. We use the podcast, and we have several of her books. They really like them.
Great podcasts about saint stories. Was it the Mary Beggars has saint stories?
Shining Light does
Shining Light
stories.
does
And then who's the one that does like they do like a dramatic reading theater type thing?
Yeah, there's a new one or another one. Mary Beggars does that, and then also Saints Alive.
Yes, that's the one I was looking. That's the one I was thinking of.
And then like my kids or my oldest really enjoys. I enjoyed listening with my husband the Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. And so just like as you get older, as you know, the older kids, I learn a lot from Catholic Sprouts, but my 10-year-old feels like the music is too childlike now. She changed the music, and
my 12-year-old still likes it.
I know. I don't know what the deal is. Like, they changed the music, and he's like, "It sounds like Daniel Tiger." I'm like, "It does not sound like Daniel Tiger. It sounds great."
Nancy, we love you.
Yes, we love Catholic Sprouts. But like, there's other, things that kind of. Like, he likes the weird stuff. He likes, his episode about unicorns and stuff. So
something that what my goddaughter brought to my house that my boys were interested in, and she had graphic novels about saints. She brought hers about Teresa of Avila, and all my kids loved it. And it's just a graphic novel about her life, and she said there's several others in the series that she has.
Saints Chronicles. My son has one of those.
Yeah, we have
those. Yeah, those are fun. Well, and I would say too, like my son has called a couple of times Catholic Answers.
Oh yeah.
And asked questions. He got so nervous about it, but I was so proud of him. He actually asked the question. And then I would also say, if we're talking about like directly catechizing our kids, like just scripture reading, like reading a section, not even necessarily a whole chapter a night or something, but like a section a night. Or during the day or something, and then everybody can ask questions about it, discuss it, even just a little bit, and then if you don't know the answers, looking it up and getting back with your kids and looking it up together.
Another way that would actually help your priests, but also have them there, invite your priest over to dinner, and my kids always ask the priest questions. We have 2 priests that we try to invite over on a fairly regular basis, and they always have questions for them. So if you don't feel adequate, invite the priest over for dinner when he's over. He doesn't want to be bombarded with dinner. He's coming over to relax and hang out with you guys. But the children...
No, you can't go to dinner with a family of small children and be expected to relax.
This is true.
I think that's it. They don't get that at the rectory at home, so it's can be a fun way. Yeah, it's good for them to see and to be a part of the family of the church. Another thing I was going to suggest is, we've talked about this a lot on the podcast too, is the whole like idea of liturgical living and like adding in different just like following the church calendar. I mean, the church gives us a way to live through Jesus's life on earth and in heaven, like, and all that through her calendar, through the liturgy, and like the other day, Transfiguration. And so we after dinner, my husband got out our children's Bible, like the St. Mary's Press Children's Bible, and read the Transfiguration, and then we had root beer floats, and I showed this is an idea I had gotten from the Kinder Tyranny's Catholic All Year, where he was white. The clothes is dazzling white. So we had our vanilla ice cream, and then it's like, and then a cloud came over him, and I poured the soda, and it like lifted up and made this big cloud. And coincidentally or not, August 6th, the Feast of the Transfiguration is also National Root Beer Float Day.
Nice.
So double whammy.
Touche, God, touche.
So I know why it can be frustrating that it seems like these programs are going away, but you can also just look at the recent National Eucharistic Conference. There's 60,000 people there. Like, our church is strong, but it starts at home. And And so if you don't feel like you have enough, like hopefully we gave you a couple of good tangible things to use or look up. And we would love for you guys to share. You can message us or go or join our Facebook group and comment when we post this. And there's always a post for each episode that we do, and comment underneath the episode. What do you use at home to help educate your children in the faith? Or what worked for you when you were being raised up in the faith? If you're cradle Catholic, or what brought you to the church if you're a convert.
Yeah, and I would also say, we talked a lot about like, catechizing our own kids, but again, that community aspect, we don't have it through the church, like through actual church organization. Talking to friends, there's a feast day coming up and you Google on Catholicizing, some fun thing that you can do. Invite some friends over and say, hey, do you guys want to do this St. Lucy thing? Or do a Christmas party, or do an Easter celebration, and we can, practice this play or whatever, like have them do a small play. Or, if you don't really know a whole lot of people in the church, that takes kind of stepping out of your comfort zone and getting to know people. But, getting to know other families in your parish is a really beautiful thing. Or like, I know people who go to parishes where they're pretty much like the only family with kids, and that can be really hard. But maybe getting a part of a Facebook group and saying, hey, who's here, around this area or something. And again, it takes stepping out of your comfort zone, but it's worth it when you think about, that this is a community aspect for your kids. And I think that when we are in community and your kids can see not only you practicing the faith, but the other people who are close to them practicing the faith, who are also positive influences on them, then it equips them more and to be able to live out their faith life throughout their entire lives.
That's how I met Lauren. She had these tiny saint celebrations, is what she called it, at her house, where just once a month or so, there was a different saint of that month that she had a little thing, and they had like cross, and she said something about it on Facebook. And I don't know, like, I don't know how it was, I don't know. I don't exactly remember. We met on Facebook, and then I went to one of those. And that's kind of how I met her. And it was because she was reaching out. She was like, I need this for my kids. I don't want them to be doing it alone. I want them to have other friends that I see do these things too. And it's like, we're not alone in this like crazy Catholic world. And and then we became really good friends.
Well, I like that you mentioned Lauren, because the way I met Lauren, I think that maybe when Alisha met Lauren too, is at a retreat that she did. And so like look for retreats too in your area, because that's a good way to meet other moms, like, or other women.
I know we have a lot of listeners that aren't moms, that aren't dealing with catechizing their children, but helping other members of their family, or trying to live out their faith, maybe in a family where they're the only person doing that. And that, people have questions, and why are you like this crazy person who goes to mass every Sunday, or you eat Jesus? What's up with that? Like, we're all called to, like, we have to be able to defend our faith to the world. It just is growing scarier and scarier to do that. Thankfully, there are many resources out there to help us, but the biggest thing is to cling to God's word. Like Alisha mentioned, reading your Bible, whether that's with your family or reading it just yourself, and what is God speaking to you.
And maybe a retreat. And I know we're talking about community, but also personal prayer life, which you kind of were starting to touch on a little bit too. Like there are, finding other resources like online, or you can, U.S. Council of Bishops, they have daily readings there. So if you can get your Bible out, but if you're wanting to be more like with the liturgical season, that's a good way of staying on it. And they even have, if maybe you're too busy to sit down, they have it where you can press it and somebody will read it to you. So they do have an audio choice on there. So that's one way. Or if you do have the Hallow app or anything like that, those are all good ways of, they're not good ways of finding other people because you don't get to talk, but they're good ways of strengthening your prayer life, because it's easier to evangelize others when you're also working on yourself. So we hope we were able to give you some things to look into and to think about. Go make disciples.
And as always, thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Join us again in 2 weeks.
Until then, may God bless you and may Mary accompany you.
Coffee and Catholics is a proud partner of the Smart Catholics Podcast Network. Find new shows to love, meet like-minded Catholics, and join the community at smartcatholics.com.